Hey there, I am Tabitha Westbrook, and I am the founder and CEO of The Journey in the Process. And I want to welcome you to our newest series where we are helping you get to know each one of our therapists. We are super blessed here at The Journey in the Process to have the most amazing therapists, the best trained trauma therapists and biblical counselors that I think you will find anywhere. We wanted to do this series to help you get to know each one of the clinicians at The Journey in the Process. So you're going to get to know a little bit about each person and a little bit about how they do what they do, and even a couple personal details about their life. I can't wait for you to hear it. I hope that you truly enjoy it. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Victoria Ellis, and we are going to get started.
Hi, my name is Victoria Ellis here at The Journey in the Process, and I have the pleasure of interviewing one of our therapists, Tish MacPherson. Tish is one of my beloved friends and therapists here at The Journey in the Process, and I'm so excited for you guys to get to know her and get to meet her. I've always wanted to know what originally drew you to the field of counseling.
I have worked in the corporate world and it never really felt like it fit. So after about 20 years, I started pursuing what does fit. What is that vocation that I was made for? And noticed that I was always falling in situations where people were seeking advice from me. My office was always open and people would come and plop down and tell me their problems. Or in the church setting, I was always involved in some sort of lay ministry where I was mentoring or doing something like that. So I knew just from, they say, look at your life to figure out what your vocation is. What have you been doing all your life? And I looked at that and I took some assessments, and it just became clear that I would do something involved with helping people. I wasn't sure what that would be, but I eventually decided to go back and get my education in clinical mental health counseling. And here I am.
It sounds like the first thing that you noticed is what you were good at or what you were naturally drawn to, or rather, the kind of people who are drawn to you.
Hmm.
And there you realized you had a gift and an ability to help people in a really
Hmm.
but
I'll also say it came from a place of hurt too, because, or just some sort of sense of pain that something was lacking. I had, in some respects, a good career, but it just never felt like it fit me. It was in accounting, it was with numbers. It just wasn't satisfying. And so I was really looking for something more.
yeah, that makes sense. Was there a defining moment in the midst of that pain search made you go, okay, because you said that you searched for a little bit about you took different assessments, things like that. Was there one
Mhm.
moment you were like, okay, therapy, that's what I would like to do?
I would say it was from talking to a friend who was a counselor
Mhm.
and just getting some feedback from her. And that was a catalyst. She said, take a course, see what you think, dip your toe in. And so I did. Each semester was like, well, I'll just try a semester, see
Hmm.
how it goes. And the next thing I knew, I kept sticking with it. My husband was a good cheerleader. He was like, nope, you're not quitting. Keep doing it.
It strikes me when you're saying that a lot of times it's the people around us who see the parts of us we can't see that maybe we take for granted or we become very matter of fact about.
Yes.
And it sounds like for you, it was a lot of people around you who were able to say, like, no, Tish, you would be good at this. You are good at this.
Hmm. I think so. Yeah, that's true.
What do you love the most about the work that you do?
I I like the partnering. I don't feel comfortable directing people to answers or solutions or things like that. I like the partnership of working with someone aligned with their goals and what they want. And let's see how we can arrive at this together. That's what I really like. And I try to encourage my clients to join in that. Sometimes I think people who haven't been to counseling take a more passive role, like they sit in the chair and they want you to fix them.
Mhm.
And I want to partner together. I find that very satisfying.
Yeah. This might just be me being nosy, and let me know if this is a question that you're like, I'm not sure how to answer that. But what does it look like for you to partner with someone?
It looks like me encouraging their investment in
Mhm.
their well-being, which is sometimes hard, especially if someone is coming in with a lot of hurt and pain. They maybe don't feel empowered. That's what I want to do for them. Is just help them feel like they have some power to affect change in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I know in healing, one of the first battles that people with trauma face is the battle to defend themselves, like that they have a right to person and to have an opinion about their life and their pain.
Mhm. Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle with having had their voices taken from them or being punished for having a voice. And so I know it must feel both intimidating, but also very healing to have a therapist who is willing to let them set the pace.
Mhm. Yeah.
Is there a personal story or experience that shapes how you show up for your clients?
Mhm. When I retired from my corporate job, it was really beautiful. They had a nice party for me, and each person filled out a small slip of paper, just some comment about me. And one said, I actually have it here. Tish, you have the rare quality of being blunt without being mean. And so I have taken that. I know what they're talking about. I'm sometimes misunderstood as too nice, but I'm also very direct. And that experience of receiving that kind of feedback at my retirement, that's how I show up for people.
Yes.
I will not mince words and I will be direct about something that I'm observing, but I'm not going to be mean about it. And quite frankly, I probably word it very carefully just because I don't want it to be misconstrued or misunderstood, even though I'm saying something that's very direct. So
Yeah,
I show up with honesty but kindness.
I love that. I in my story, I've been through many, many therapists. And one thing that I've realized is it's not the therapists who are the blank walls who help me. It's the therapists who are able to tell me the truth in a loving way so that I see the truth and I can find that freedom in that. And so that's beautiful. Yeah. I also love how, like you just said, you are genuinely kind and intentional with the truth,
Mhm.
which is rare. Words can fly easy, but they stick for a long time.
Oh, we do, for sure. Not enough people are careful with their words.
We talked a bit about why you do what you do.
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit more about like how you do what you do. What do you specialize in and how does that specialization help with clients? What's your favorite type of work that you do?
Our practice in general works with trauma. And I would say I work in trauma and grief and spiritual integration. But within that, I come from a perspective of an Enneagram informed trauma therapy. I really want to understand my client's point of view and their perspective and how they look at the world, how they think, their go to feelings, their go to behavior. That helps me help them better because each client is unique, just like our fingerprints. Their traumas are unique. And the more I can understand where they sit in the world, and the Enneagram helps me do that, then the more I can help them, the better I can help them, the more efficiently I can help them. And not only that, then they can learn to help themselves because they learn to understand their default, where their ego really comes into play. And they may not be their own best
Mhm.
friend in terms of healing.
So we had previously talked about how you really want to start seeing how the Enneagram can be helpful with trauma. Can you elaborate more on where you see that being helpful or where you'd like to play around with that?
Without getting into the specifics of the Enneagram, but there are 9 different personalities. And with each of those personalities, I understand where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are based on that tool. And so when we're working, let's say we're working with body work, with the trauma, the different people may need different type of body work, or they may find that different body work is more effective for them to self-regulate and to tolerate any distress that they're experiencing. We can do that anyway with our client, see what sticks, what doesn't stick. But I have a better sense of what will work if I know what their Enneagram number is.
That is fascinating to me. Like, genuinely, for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know, a great deal of trauma work is stored in the body. Only a small percentage of it actually deals with the prefrontal cortex, which is where I think where I am. Any way that we can get the body involved and we can help those protective barriers be maneuvered around that can help you actually process trauma is where the real work happens in a lot of ways. So if you don't mind, can I indulge my curiosity a little bit?
Sure.
So you said that based on the Enneagram, you can get a sense of how somebody's going to respond. Could you give an example? Let's take an Enneagram 4. If you knew that somebody was an Enneagram 4, how would you start approaching that person?
Well, that tells me there are 3 ways to move in the world. You move towards people, you withdraw, and you come alongside people. Those are the 3 options with the Enneagram, and the numbers fall into those 3 categories. I know with a 4, they tend to withdraw. They like to be by themselves. They get rejuvenated and refreshed that way and recharged. So with a withdrawing type, I would say some sort of somatic work that is soft and relaxing, and maybe even like the paired muscle relaxation where you're really tight with your muscles for a couple of seconds and then you release and let that go. Whereas a more aggressive type on the Enneagram who likes to go towards people, they're going to want to go towards some activity that's a lot more forceful than, say, an Enneagram 4 that likes to settle back in, be by themselves. They'll do their body work alone, and it'll be paced and probably slower.
Wow. Well, first off, you're spot on. So the Enneagram 4 in the room. That was beautifully put, Tish. And I can see how seen your clients are going to feel being able to match their pace. Especially, again, as a trauma therapist, I've done a lot of trauma therapy and I've had a lot of trauma therapy. And having somebody who's able to match your pace is so important for those walls coming down for you to be able to face your pain well. Beautiful.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you wish people understood? Speaking of pace, what is that you wish people understood about trauma and the healing process?
That it is stored in the body. We talked about that. Trauma is stored in the body. Trauma is what happens to you inside your body when an event happens. And so I wish people understood that, first of all. And that happens individually, very individually, and very uniquely for each person. And then their response to the trauma is also very individualized and unique. The same event, we can have an earthquake and a whole city of people traumatized, but there's going to be as many people as there are that many different trauma responses. So it's very individualized.
I think that's one of the most important first steps is recognizing that I'm not doing my trauma wrong. I think that's something I hear a lot. I'm sure you've also heard it too, is like, am I crazy? Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing a good job of therapy? Or even the ways that trauma can be like a train crashing through our lives. And there's so much of that too. Not responding the same way this person is responding.
Recognizing that I've had trauma, you know, I think a lot of times I think more and more today in today's world, people do recognize it. But I can look back in previous generations, like my parents' generation, which is the World War II generation, and they've been through trauma too, but they didn't address it. So I think there's just even recognizing I've been through some trauma and it's affected me and paying attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how many things got normalized and do get normalized.
Mhm.
And then someone once said, trauma that's not addressed becomes culture.
Mm,
And how many things are we currently trying to heal as a culture that have
right.
just accumulated by generational trauma?
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, but how do you integrate the mind and body and spirit in your approach to therapy?
Neuroscience fascinates me. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, of course, God made our bodies this way. And so it does all fit together. Our minds are mapped out by God about how the world should be. When something happens, and we notice, oh, there's an error there. This is not how the world should be. There's a contradiction. Like I'm feeling it in my body. I'm recognizing in my mind that there's a contradiction here. And I think where faith steps in is if you know God, if you walk with God, you learn that he promises that there's going to be a future where it is going to go according to your map in your mind. There won't be contradictions. And pulling that all together for people, if they're interested, I love that.
Are there any modalities or methods that you specifically use? We already talked about the Enneagram.
Mhm.
You talked a little bit about the body work, but is there any specific way you try to access the body or techniques you use for healing trauma?
I am trained in EMDR, so I use that. And my prep work when I'm first working with a client is to do a lot of body work, help them recognize, help them attune to their bodies. And so that when they leave, they're still like, oh, wait, she asked me about my body. Maybe I should ask myself about, And so in their everyday life, just getting used to that and then learning how to associate my body's feeling this way. How am I emotionally right now? And then just to connect those dots with what am I thinking right now? What am I sensing? How do those relate? And trying to build some ties there. That's what I like to do with trauma. With grief work, I use a model of continuing bonds. So once a person, a loved one, has passed or is gone from our lives and we don't get to be with them, there are still, according to attachment theory, continuing bonds. So I still have, for example, my mother has passed, but I still have an attachment to her. I still have a bond that continues to today. I might think of something that she would have said in a situation that would have been funny, or I might, as I'm cooking one of her recipes, I'll remember her and how she used to do that. All of the memories are all still there. And I like to work with my clients who are going through grief with that model.
I had not actually heard of the continuing bonds theory or methodology.
Mhm.
I feel that in my own body, how my body was responding.
It's so important to give people who have lost the permission, the invitation to say, yes, you can still experience that person in
Yeah.
your life. They're not cut off. They're not.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like sometimes we have a stoicism that we approach grief with. I think of that famous quote, do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not here. I do not sleep. That kind of, I'm gone. There's no reason to
Mhm.
miss me.
Yeah.
I think of relationships that with people who are no longer here and miss them. And
Mhm.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's what do we do with that? What do we do with that loss, that missing? I need something to do with it. And that model helps people know what to do with it.
I love that. Thank you, Tish. Now, I know here at the Journey in the Process, we serve both Christian and non-Christian communities. So I am curious about, how do your personal values influence your approach to therapy?
I am a Christian, and simply stated, I highly value loving God and loving others. Jesus was asked what are the greatest two commandments, and it's to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love others as you do yourself. I don't always do that perfectly, but that's at the root of who I am and who I want to be. I would say that's my value. And whether or not someone sitting across from me is a Christian or not, it still holds.
Mhm.
And that's the beauty of that. That's the beauty of so many things that Jesus taught. It's who do you want to be with others? And so that's how I approach when I'm sitting in session across from somebody. Approach them as a human being made in the image of God.
Mhm.
And what is it they need to say? What is it they need? How can I help them?
With faith, there's been one of the things that we see a lot in the Journey in the Process is spiritual abuse or spiritual trauma. And so one question I have is, how do you create a space where the clients can explore their faith or spiritual questions without fear or pressure?
I really want them to take the lead, and I want to explore it with them. So I want to walk down that road with them, and I will question things that they say, a question how that concept might have been taught to them, and invite maybe another perspective, another way to reframe that concept that might be helpful to them. If I
Mhm.
see that they're struggling with something that's been taught to them that's pressurized. I mean, I'm still learning, and I've been a believer for a long time, about 40 years. And so I have learned a lot over the years. And what I thought I knew, it gets relearned in maybe in a different way. And so I think we're always on this path of learning more about God and becoming more of a follower. And so it's a road that we all travel down. And I just want to be a fellow traveler side by side with my client and go at the pace that they want to go at. I really let them lead on that.
I love how that matches so much of what you said about, I want to partner with my
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
clients and creating a space for truth that is kind.
mm-hmm.
For so many people of faith, there's a lot of being told who you are and what you should believe, and how frightening but beautiful the freedom is to explore truth
Yeah.
in a way that's not about getting it right or wrong, but about, let's just discover. And it comes space for that with your clients. Would that be a good description?
Yeah, yeah, it would be because I think just concepts of salvation and all of the big theological concepts, there are varying ways to look at it, all within truth, but often I find that people have only been taught to look at it one way.
Last question in the faith area. What's something you've learned about the intersection of trauma and faith that surprised you? Is there anything that made you go, huh?
I don't know that it surprised me, but again, it just put the pieces together is the body.
Mhm.
So sometimes in some religious circles, we're only thought to think about our faith as a spiritual
Yeah.
aspect. And that's just not the whole piece of who we are.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, in some psychological circles, it's the mind.
Mm.
And it's just this, again, going back to the body, we are embodied human beings. From a faith perspective, the body matters. The sacred can be found in the body, giving birth, eating, and having fellowship. Like there's something about you and I can have fellowship, but if we're actually sharing a meal, it's a little more sacred. You
Yeah.
know? And that body aspect is who God made. He didn't make us brains on a stick. He didn't make us these spiritual beings that are flying around and have no bodies. There's a reason that he made us the way he did. And so I would say the body is like bringing both those things, the trauma and your spiritual life or your faith together.
One thing that I tell people is your body is not a car that your mind drives. I personally believe that the human being is created in a Trinitarian way. We have a body and a mind and a soul,
Mhm.
and there's not a hierarchy there. And the body is so vitally important to being human. And I love how you said that these embodied experiences are sacred, like
Mhm.
things that we take for granted. But how important is it to get a hug or to eat with someone or play together? And you can't do that without the physicality. What does your ideal self-care look like?
An ideal day for me would be wake up, have some quiet time with God with the coffee or a tea. That's just how I start my day. And then it would be some form of exercise outdoors, whether it's walking or something like yoga or Pilates. I like that type of work. Again, that's very body. I don't know if you know, but my background is in dance. I majored in dance as undergrad. So it's like I've always been very self-aware of my body and placement and stuff. So I like activities like that. I love swimming, in anything in or on the water. So some form of exercise would have to be my ideal day with a friend or my husband, just doing it together. And then a nap on the beach would be ideal to hear the waves. I'm not a super outdoorsy person. You won't find me climbing cliffs or anything like that, but there's something about being outdoors that makes me feel good. And then the other thing about me and an ideal day is I do not like to be rushed. I do not like that. I mean, I've done enough of it in my lifetime, raising kids and working as the pace of that was ridiculous. But now that I'm older and I can say, no, I'm not going to rush. I don't want to rush through anything. So my ideal day would not have any rushing. And then we'd probably have a nice meal outdoors with no bugs.
No bugs. I don't know how likely that is, but I have hope for you. What would you say to someone who's on the fence about starting therapy?
I would say this would be what someone would probably say to me. And so I say it to others. In order for you to care for others, you need to care for yourself first. So please care for yourself so that you can care for others. It's the old image of putting the face mask on mom first on the airplane before the child. And what a beautiful model too. You just can't care well for others unless you're caring for yourself.
One of the visualizations that I think of sometimes is you can't pour out of an empty cup.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I think a lot of us walk around saying, I have one last drop in there.
Nothing coming out.
What gives you hope for the people you serve?
Well, I just believe in hope. One of my daughter's names is Hope, and she was named that because I needed a lot of hope in that time in my life. So what gives me hope is just to keep hoping for my clients. I mean, I see clients really dealing with some heavy, heavy things, but I know that there's nothing too heavy for God, for him to heal. And I just hold out hope to my clients.
Is there anything that else you wanted to say or share?
I can share a little bit about my personal life. I'm married for a really long time. In 2020, we were going to go to Italy for our 40th wedding anniversary and never made it. So we're resurrecting that. So that kind of tells you how long we've been married. And like 6 years later, we're going to finally make that trip happen. We have 4 children, grown adults, and 10 grandchildren. And so my life is very full. I'm very blessed. And I don't always like that phraseology. There, but for the grace of God go I is really how I see life. And I'm very grateful for what I've been given. That's my personal life.
Tish, thank you so much for taking time out of your week to meet with me. and let me interview you.
Absolutely. It was a delight, Victoria. Thank you.
And I hope you guys got a good glimpse of Tish and what makes her so amazing and so special. I know that I have benefited quite a lot just by being her friend and coworker.
I hope you enjoyed that interview and I hope that it helped you get to know our therapists a little bit better. If you feel like this therapist is the right fit for you, please reach out to www.thejourneyandtheprocess.com and we'll have that linked below and you can get started on your healing journey today. Thank you again for taking the time to get to know our team. We hope that it has blessed you and we'll see you again soon.